Hello everyone! I really wanted to make another analysis / theory video, so here we are. This video and theory was helped by one of my close friends called Kriller. You can check their YouTube channel and Reddit in the description. So as y'all can already tell by the title and thumbnail, yes, this isn't a joke, but I believe BBH is the mastermind of the Egg arc, the one who has been pulling the puppet strings behind the scenes all along. I know it's hard to believe at a first glance. After all, Bat's character is made out to be the sweet, pure, and innocent cinnamon roll who has been tragically infected by the egg and just wanted his best friend back. But that's not the case at all, at least I don't think so. Bat is a deceptive character that's shrouded in mystery, and despite being essentially the main protagonist of the Egg arc, he's an extremely unreliable narrator. He lies to his audience, friends, allies, and enemies alike, setting himself up to be, dare I say, the next big villain of the SMP next to Quackity. It's not just vague hints and grasping for straws that has led to this conclusion. There are clear inconsistencies between his action and the facade he puts on, and even undeniable evidence that proves he is linked in some way to the egg itself. To start off the theory, I'm gonna go first to the proof that he isn't infected, which I know is the first argument people are gonna use against me, is that he's just infected. But there are very huge inconsistencies with that it makes it very unlikely that he actually is even infected. First of all, BBH's behavior about the egg is off. He acts very self-aware in this stream where he first talks to Quackity about the egg, very much aware of what is happening and what the egg wants. He also ends up being very harsh to the egg sometimes, being disappointed in it when it doesn't cheer Tommy's death, or straight up telling it to shut up multiple times in one of his streams where he ended up snapping and killing Skeppy. Talking about that stream, BBH's whole behavior in that stream fell off. He kept insisting to the audience that he loved the egg, but it's clear that he isn't overjoyed about it and not really under its spell. When Red Skeppy asks for BBH to stand on the egg to feel its power, BBH first dismisses it, but even when he stands on it, he doesn't seem to actually feel anything, lying to Red Skeppy about it. Now, that's just a vague hint, but no. The biggest and huge blow that completely throws BBH's infected facade into the water is BD Island. Now, if you don't know, the BD Island is BBH and Skeppy's vacation home. This started when BBH led Skeppy, who was uninfected at the time, suspiciously onto an island and was overall being manipulative about it. He then left Skeppy isolated and stuck on the island for approximately 2 months. The BD Island was officially rendered canon by BBH recently, and in fact, he said he doesn't want to talk about it because it's gonna be very important in the future. Now, what about BD Island throws a huge wrench in the idea that BBH is infected? Pure and simple. It makes his motivation completely fall apart. Because Skeppy on BD Island is back to normal. If his goal was to have Skeppy again, then why isn't he just leaving the egg? Skeppy is blue again, and yes, he could turn back at any time, but it doesn't make sense for BBH to stick with the egg since it's clear that the egg at this point just gets in the way of his true desires. Now, the real kicker here is, after Skeppy dies, we are shown a scene where Skeppy is clearly back to normal, and I doubt it's a flashback scene or a hallucination because BBH was very unwilling to say anything about it. So even if you could use the excuse that Skeppy being blue on BD Island wasn't canon, you can't use that excuse now. And him continuing to go through the plan with the Red Banquet shows that Skeppy isn't the main reason why he's continuing this. To add on to it, BBH is then incredibly vague about his motivation during the banquet, not really outright saying what it actually is, despite us knowing, in quotation mark, what it is. His reaction also to Red Skeppy is weirdly inconsistent. At first, when he is infected, in quotation mark, he says that he is completely fine with Skeppy being red and that it's good and that he loves the egg. But his behavior afterwards completely say otherwise, actively avoiding Skeppy being red and being furious at Red Skeppy later on. And after all of this, the egg doesn't respond to BBH's rebellious behavior. Not once calling him out or be angry at him, despite the egg being furious at Sam for breaking free or trying to break others free. In fact, the egg has actually almost never accurately manipulated BBH, never bringing up Skeppy or tried to threaten BBH to stay with it. There is also another detail that puts a huge question mark on BBH's infected status. We know that Ant and Skeppy, after both dying, turned back to normal. We know that BBH most likely died along with Skeppy when he pushed him in lava, because the life bonds BBH and Skeppy have together because of the scene after Skeppy's death. The life bond that, BBH has stated before, he wanted to make canon. Now, if you didn't figure out already, if Ant and Skeppy both got turned to normal after dying, why isn't it the same for BBH? Unless he was pretending to be infected during the banquet. And that's again putting the benefit of the doubt on BBH and believing he actually wasn't pretending to be infected this entire time. Him faking being infected could also totally be possible. He saw how the egg affects colors and could totally try to replicate that through his clothing. We also know that understanding the egg doesn't mean you are infected, since Ranboo clearly understands it despite not being infected at all. Plus, adding on to it, we never saw BBH get infected or his transformation towards being infected. Before I finish this part, I will leave you with this interesting detail. BBH's skin, despite being accurate, the color red of his skin got turned to white, his blue diamond sword is still blue, which is incredibly suspicious since BBH or Skeppy at least made the effort to change the skin of Red Skeppy to make it more accurate to the egg's abilities. Why isn't BBH's skin met with the same treatment? Now let's get to the other part of the theory and crank it up a notch. I think BBH also is responsible for the egg appearing on the SMP and knows about it more than he lets on. Something incredibly suspicious about how the egg appeared is the fact that we never see BBH's first reaction to finding the egg, and the way he describes how he found it is even more suspicious, saying that he dug out the egg even though the room is entirely the same as it was when it was finished, excluding the egg. That doesn't help that BBH then changes his story about how the egg was found, saying afterwards that the egg appeared out of nowhere. So, which one is it, BBH? BBH, did you dug out the egg or did it appear out of nowhere? He also never seemed to want to completely destroy the egg, not even once, and never tried to find a way to neutralize it completely, making excuses after excuses as to why they shouldn't destroy it. When Ant first asked why BBH didn't want to destroy the egg, which was at the time recovered in obsidian, he said it was because if they break the obsidian, they would be infected again. But even when they have a way to not be infected anymore, and found a way to neutralize the egg, which was church prime water, BBH did nothing against it, and in fact actually helped the egg. Now, you may ask, how did BBH help the egg at all? He contained its power with the obsidian. But that's where you are wrong. The obsidian has been confirmed to help the egg grow stronger, and BBH knew that at the time, because when Skeppy was stuck in the egg, he was afraid that the obsidian would make the effects of the egg inflicted on Skeppy grow stronger. He said way later in the stream, where he celebrated Tommy's death, that the obsidian only made the egg's power grow, implying heavily that he knew this entire time. And even if you don't have those pretty big hints, BBH keeping enveloping the egg in obsidian should be a pretty big hint as well, especially since he saw the egg just ended up growing bigger and stronger. The obsidian also was pretty useless since they had prime suit to keep them safe, so why keep the obsidian when it was clearly just making the egg stronger? Again, I would be way less suspicious if BBH ever tried to once stop the egg, but everything he did, even when he was uninfected in quotation mark, only served to help the egg. Even if he did break all of those vines, it's clear the vines aren't what's important, since they easily decide to break off the vines before the banquet, showing that breaking the vines don't really mean anything. Now, with all of this in mind, either BBH is an idiot, or he has been secretly behind the egg this entire time. Now, I'm gonna talk about the big part of the theory, and really the one with the most damning proof. The first part were appetizers. This is the big one. I think BBH is related or has created the egg. If you look at the egg and BBH, you can immediately tell the similarities between them. Their main color is both red, and if you look at BBH's highlights on his hood, you can clearly see that it has the unmistakable shape of the egg. BBH is also heavily insinuated to be a demon, even calling his character a demon at one point. And the egg has very hints of being demonic in some way, being made out of blocks primarily from the Nether, the whole eating people thing, and its weakness to blue fire. Also, something incredibly interesting is that Foolish said that demons have powers to influence the mind in some way. again linking BBH and the egg. Another incredibly huge thing linking BBH to the egg that I've seen no one talk about is that BBH was very unwilling to say who is voicing the egg, saying it was gonna be important later on. Now, if you haven't heard the egg, it's incredibly clear that it's BBH that is voicing the egg, and later on in one of Foolish's stream, where he heard the egg in reverse, BBH revealed after some hesitation that he is in fact the voice actor for the egg. He even called it a fucking spoiler before revealing it. Yes, he plays it cool afterwards, trying to insinuate that anyone could have done it, but it's most likely trying to get people to stop realizing the truth. This basically confirms at a 100% that BBH has somewhat a link with the egg. We also know that someone has to be behind the egg, because BBH was also very unwilling to say who was building the vines. And why force a person to do a job, and I doubt he would force a person like Dream or DreamXD to do so, because that doesn't make sense. Why force a person to do a job you can easily do yourself? So that again puts a big hint that BBH is behind the egg. Plus, BBH has heavily hinted that the vines were made in survival, again throwing the possibility of it being DreamXD out of the window. Plus, it's a pretty stupid theory in my opinion. Now, people will most likely go against me saying that Tales of the SMP, the Masquerade, contradicts my theory, because the egg is way older than BBH. But that's an argument based on nothing. BBH is heavily implied to be a demon, or at least immortal, with the whole Skebby thing, so it's entirely possible that he was alive at that time. Talking about the Masquerade episode of the Tales of the SMP, there are big hints about how it could connect to BBH and the egg's nature. First of all, the interesting thing is the room where the egg lies. It has cages and a brewing stand, almost as if it was an experiment room, and Sir Billiam saying that's a breeding ground for the egg heavily hints that the egg actually was created by someone, specifically the past owner of this mansion before it was owned by Sir William, again confirming that someone is behind the egg's creation. There's also a slight hint that BBH possibly owned this past mansion. First of all, the fact that it's a mansion, BBH and Skeppy are known to own a mansion, the fact that the exterior is made out of quartz similarly like their mansion. There's also the carpets on the mansions reminiscing of BBH's skin, and two rooms very reminiscing of Skeppy and BBH. Plus, to add on to it, Skeppy liked to tweet linking Sir Billiam's mansion to BBH. Take that as you will. All of this hints back that BBH made the egg inside of this mansion before mysteriously leaving and thus having the mansion owned by Sir Billiam. Now, before I get to the last part, I'm gonna share another interesting piece of info that I found that heavily supports my theory, and it is found in the Tales of the SMP town of Misu. A lot of people were focused on how this connected to Rambu and Dream's lore, but what people didn't notice is that it gave the biggest hint that BBH's character is hiding something from us, and isn't who he seems. First of all, BBH's room, unlike the other ones, doesn't have this fun and light-hearted feel that the other rooms had. It's smaller, it has less of the funny and silly carpets. It's even described as BBH's lair and not an actual room. It also connects, again, BBH and the egg together with the blocks that the room is made of. They are very linked to the egg, like Crimson Nylum and Nether Bricks. The room is also shaped like a dome, again reminiscing of the egg. But the most unsettling thing about this room isn't the link to the egg, but the lack of info we ever get in BBH's room. In fact, BBH is one of the characters in Town of Misu we get the least information on. Even with the second book, we don't get any information at all. Nothing about the egg, nothing about the Badlands, nothing about him or Skeppy's relationship, or even other characters. But the biggest part is one of the book in BBH's room. It's completely empty. Someone didn't want us to know something about BBH and erase information on that book. That alone confirms to us that something is being hidden from us about BBH and that he isn't what he seems. Now, let's get to the conclusion. How does this fit BBH's character, and how is this all gonna affect the plot? I feel like a lot of people are gonna go into this video thinking this doesn't fit BBH's character at all. And if you don't believe that, then just check BBH's Manberg vs. Poctopia stream or his speech about his strategy for the war. BBH created the Badlands to take over the SMP with Skeppy by fanning the flames of chaos, sitting back, and wait for everything to be weakened and destroyed to completely take over. This motivation was shown ever since BBH ever decided to participate in the lore of the SMP. His character is, and has always been a villain, and has shown almost no hints of actually understanding how unsympathetic and horrible his mentality is. When Lemember got destroyed both times, each time it happened, BBH was cheering and being ecstatic, despite his friends and even his own fucking son being hurt by this destruction. Of course, people brush it off because of the persona BBH gives to others, acting nice, incompetent, and wholesome. But all of this is BBH's strategy to avoid being seen, to slowly take over the SMP bit by bit. Now, what I think this reveal is gonna do is solidify BBH as a main villain after the months of build-up this character has been doing ever since the beginning of the SMP lore, and finally give people the wake-up call that we are not dealing with our innocent, wholesome BBH, but possibly a character that's probably worse than Dream. Another thing that I think somewhat solidifies all of this is Sam's and Dream's claim that something completely unexpected is gonna happen that completely changes everything in the plot and is gonna make everything go crazy. Dream also added that there is a huge amount of red herrings that are in the story, and I think that villain BBH reveal is what's gonna get our plot moving. It's unexpected, changes everything, and completely changes our view on who the threat of the SMP is right now, while also being heavily foreshadowed in a clever way to make the plot go forward. I'm gonna end the video, and I'm maybe gonna make other theory videos on BBH, mainly because I have a shit ton of theory about him and how he potentially is behind all of the crazy shit that happened on the SMP lately. But like I said, I can't make any promises. These theories might be a little crazy since they are very unusual from all the Rambo/Dream are behind everything theories, but to be honest, I'm a little tired of them and think they are both unlikely and boring. Not that I don't like their characters, I just don't like the theories around them. So I want to bring to light more interesting theories involving more underrated characters, or try to bring up theories that aren't as talked about. I know this video was very rushed, but it was mainly because of the stream BBH that BBH is gonna post soon, the big finale for the egg, and I didn't want to post it afterwards because it could potentially completely render my video useless because it would have already been confirmed or denied. But yeah, so it's the reason why this video is so choppy. But if you want a more accurate version of this theory, you can check in my comments. I will have a posted comments with links of Reddit posts that more accurately describes theories of how the egg is related to BBH and how BBH is behind the whole egg arc. So with all of this said, I'm gonna say goodbye. See ya!